obviously like, you know, dust is going to accumulate from wherever, like, you know, I genuinely, I don't walk around my house with socks on. But
You
like,
walk around your house with shoes on.
Yes, I walk around. Okay.
Which is appalling.
Okay, no. Like, all right, that's true. I wear.
You wear shoes.
Okay, well,
shoes on household.
Okay, that's actually a good segue into this week's episode because, like, I actually wear Crocs in like around the house. Like, I don't wear like normal shoes, right? Like, I don't come from a traditional Asian family. Like, my dad is pretty traditional, but my mom is like pretty chill. Like, she came here when she was 10. I feel like she's been pretty westernized, and like, she kind of grew up all over Sydney. Like, when she first arrived in Australia, my family was living in Cabramatta for a year or so, and then we moved to like, actually, this is like a small story. I'm gonna go off and then I'll come back. I'll bring it back. But basically, like, they met like a really good Samaritan in a Vinnie store, like St. Vinnie's, and then basically my mum's older sister like told her our story of like kind of moving from Vietnam, like, you know, as immigrants, and then like starting a new life here and how hard that was and so forth. And then she basically had like a house that she had as an investment property, and she lent it, or she allowed our family to rent it like cheaper. And so basically my mum kind of grew up in like Vaucluse area, like the eastern suburbs, for a little bit, and then they moved to Glebe a little bit later while she was like, I think maybe towards the end of high school when she was just starting university. But basically, yeah, I feel like my mum's not super like traditional. And so because like my parents divorced and like my mum raised me, it's something where like I don't think, I know maybe for you it's like, dude, it's an absolute must. You must take your shoes off in the house. Even like when I was staying at yours for a period of time, I was like, bro, like I remember when
he would wear his Air Forces like past the shoe rack. I was like, what are you doing?
Okay. Like, to be fair, at Zoe's place, there is like a shoe rack right there. And obviously, like, you got to be respectful of other people's space and like, you know, live by their rules. But the first time I was staying at Zoe's for a little bit. That's another story, but we won't get into that. But basically, when I rocked up and I had all my stuff, I was like, I walked through the door, and then I had like I had my orange like my luggage bag. Yeah,
with
exactly.
The wheels.
Exactly. And I was like rolling, and Zoe was like, bro, you need to get the
cleaning wipes.
The cleaning wipes and wipe the wheels, bro. And I was like, what the hell, bro? And I was like, obviously like trying to be respectful because like I'm living in Zoe's space for that short period of time. But I was genuinely like, oh shit, bro, like I've never even like thought about this in my life. You know what I mean? It's like,
which is really interesting because like I've always been a no shoes household since young. I grew up in Malaysia and like in Southeast Asia. Yeah. Practically like everybody takes off their shoes when they go in, and so I've never thought that anyone would live any other way. Yeah. So, but when we go to like school, shopping malls, always keep your shoes on. So, but that's always deemed as like outside of your home. Right. But when you're in your home, like you take off your shoes. And when I first moved to Sydney or like America, and like America was the first time in my dorm room where I had like a shoes on apartment where like I would just have either my slippers on or like some sort of thing covering my feet at all times, except when I was like in the shower. Okay. But it was just really jarring, but I can see why that probably evolved to be that way in other countries, just because like Malaysia's like a tropical country, so we never have winter, so it makes sense like in the wintertime to wear like house slippers at least to keep your feet warm. And I'm like, oh, I kind of see where that comes from, but man, but it makes cleaning so much easier though. I feel like if you don't wear shoes in the house.
But I feel like there's also like a large like Chinese population in Malaysia, and so I feel like those kind of traditional customs have kind of infiltrated Malaysian
culture. It's
you
not
know
even
what I
the
mean?
Chinese, or like all the Malaysians, whether you're Malay, Indian, or Chinese, like everyone doesn't wear shoes.
Really?
In the house. Yeah.
Is that like a strictly Malaysian thing?
All of Southeast Asia, like I don't know, Singapore, Malaysia. I've never been to anyone's home like in other Southeast Asian countries, but very much Singapore, Malaysia, like nobody wears shoes in the house. Right. Okay. Like regardless of what background, racial background.
Okay, that's fair enough. Well, I feel like I mean, Malaysia in terms of ethnicity is like still pretty like, other than like the actual people that are ethnically Malay, it's like pretty like Asian dominated population.
Yeah, it's Malays, Chinese, and Indians.
And so I think like with like me being born in and raised in Australia, it's like the demographic and the environment is completely different, right? And so I've just been influenced by like my culture here, and it's like wanting to like, I feel like you know, every migrant who immigrates to a new country has to assimilate to some level in order to kind of fit in, right? Everyone wants to have a kind of a sense of belonging in the society that they've moved to, right? Or the new country that they've moved to. And I think like my mum, I don't know whether she did it consciously, but I feel like we kind of just lost those like traditional Asian values. And I don't know whether it's something that was good or bad necessarily, but that's just the way that I grew up. And so like, I honestly don't even remember like when I started like wearing shoes in the house, but it's just so like second nature to me that I don't even think about it. And so like when I go to other people's places and like if they're Asian, like most of them, the majority of my friends like, yeah, shoes off in the house, like, you know, Asian rules. And I'm like kind of like, I understand that theoretically, right?
Yeah.
But it's like I don't actually put that in practice because at home I just wear Crocs around the house.
Wait, are these Crocs, do you wear them outside too?
Yeah.
So they're like outside shoes. They're
yeah,
not
they're
like,
outside shoes.
I get it if you have like indoor shoes, because some people, there's like hotel slippers.
Yeah.
They have like shoes that they wear in the house.
Yeah.
That I can get behind.
Dude, I'm not that icky like that. I'm not going to have one pair of Crocs for in the house and one pair of Crocs for outside the house.
It makes cleaning so much easier.
Okay,
man.
that's fair. Okay. I mean, in your defense, it's because I don't really clean. And so,
that's
like,
fair.
yeah, it's something that I haven't really thought about properly yet. But, like, no, that is valid. And I think, like, I don't know. It's just like we have cleaners that come to our house, like, once every 3 weeks. And so it's something where, like, we don't really think about we don't really think about that anymore. I think like if you're cleaning your own and like you need to do it like once a week, then it's something that you're probably consciously thinking about a bit more. And you're like, okay, like dust is going to accumulate here if I like, you know, because you were living literally by yourself for 3 years, right?
Yeah.
And so you need to do all the cleaning, literally everything.
Yeah.
And so you're probably like that. I feel like that kind of stacks up in your mind a bit. Like you even talked about how like you sometimes make dishes because they're a bit easier, but like you want to use
one pot dishes.
Yeah, exactly.
So you don't have to clean as many utensils
Yeah.
or plates and bowls, because
Yeah.
if you like, for example, like something is super complicated, like take like 10 different things out and you have to like wash all 10 different things.
Yeah.
Versus like a dish that just uses like one pot, you just have to wash that one pot.
Right.
So 100%, it's just like the mental capacity.
Yeah.
But I feel like the wearing shoes thing is like, I guess similarly to you, like I've always grown up not wearing shoes in the house, because and when I first found out that people did otherwise, like that blew my mind. I was like, why would you do otherwise?
Culture shock. Yeah.
I was just like, oh my god, like, because in movies you see them like wear shoes in the house, but I thought it was just like a movie set thing.
What?
And then like I was like, oh my god, like, people actually don't wear they actually wear shoes in the house. Like people wear their shoes on their bed. I'm like,
yeah.
That's so gross.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I guess that kind of leads into our topic for this week. So let's kind of break it down. So obviously the topic this week is kind of like this notion of like the banana complex.
Okay.
And, you know,
explain what's the banana complex?
So we'll break it down for the viewers. So me and Eddie kind of talked about it, and like I feel like Eddie's actually good to riff on this subject, but he actually, just for our viewers, he was meant to be on this episode, but he got
his flight got delayed.
His flight got delayed. There were all kinds of things. I think there was like a mini storm or something, or like
it's also 4th of July weekend.
Yeah, so things were really busy or hectic, and he was actually meant to be at our Christmas in July party yesterday, which
hence the hats
he organized, but you know, he wasn't able to make it because of some circumstances that were out of his control. But just kind of breaking down this thing called like, you know, a banana, right? So banana is basically, you know, obviously everyone knows what a banana is, but it's like, because it's yellow on the outside, white on the inside. And so it's just an analogy or like a metaphor used to describe Asians that are, you know, kind of whitewashed and like westernized by the culture that they are living in.
Yeah.
And so I think like, I guess kind of want to unpack that and kind of go from there. But I think like, what was, do you have any kind of experience with that, or is it like,
I guess like I grew up in Malaysia, which is very much an Asian country, so majority are Asians. The non-Asians are expats or whoever just choose to visit or move to the country. But in our culture, like banana actually means you are, it depends like which background you are, but for a Chinese person, it's like it means that you're Chinese but you can't speak Chinese.
Okay.
Like, it's like funny because
right.
in Malaysia, like the way the school system's worked out, it's like I think depending on what school you go to, Mandarin is not like a mandatory subject.
Yeah.
So then it's like if you grew up, like if you went to a primary school where Mandarin wasn't mandatory, like a lot of times, like you wouldn't be able to speak Mandarin.
Right.
And then like we just like flame them and call them bananas essentially.
Yeah.
And it just means slightly similar things, but I guess in a different cultural context.
Right. Dude, I thought you used to get flamed. People like, yo, the way you speak Mandarin kind of sounds like a white person.
Yeah, no, I got flamed for that a lot as a kid. Like, I got really insecure about it.
Yeah.
It's like, I speak to my parents, like, in English. So, in Malaysia, it's a mix. Some people speak to their parents in Chinese, Cantonese, or, like, whatever dialect it is. But I speak to my family in English. So, I feel like the only time I really practiced Mandarin was in school. Mm-hmm. And I never like bothered to learn the pronunciation like super well.
Okay.
So I never did so for example, like something you pronounce like SHEN, like when I say it, I was like SEN. Like I would not do the qiao sha, which is like where your tongue is meant, like when you make an SH noise, like your tongue touches the ceiling of your mouth. Okay.
It's quite like a southern China kind of way of like
kind of, but I'd say like Malaysian Chinese accent is more akin to like Taiwanese than like mainland Chinese.
Yeah, okay, that's true. Honestly, when I used to use like the Chinese TikTok, like Douyin, like I would like occasionally come across like some Malaysian influences, like interviewing people on the street, like in Mandarin, and like honestly, bro, like I couldn't fully understand everything that they were saying. Like I had to like read the subtitles to kind of slowly be able to understand that.
The accent's different for sure. It's kind of similar with like Singlish or like Minglish, which is like Malaysian English, where we add like how do I say, like colloquial like slang, where it's like there's like the mas, the las, the all that plethora of words. But I feel like those stem from mixing English with like dialect.
Right.
So I feel like a lot of like Cantonese, Hokkien, Hakka backgrounds, like they add like these intonations at the back of like the language's sentences, and they just like blend it into English. But we're such like a melting pot of cultures that you often find a lot of the time we mix different languages together in the same sentence, and it doesn't make sense to anybody else outside of like the Malaysian culture, but it makes like perfect sense to us. Which is why like I guess
that's valid. It's kind of like a subculture in a way.
Kind of, yeah. So it's like I don't know, maybe because I felt like I felt insecure about the way I spoke Mandarin. I kind of like stuck to speaking like English like super well then. So I was like, okay, at least I do one thing right.
Right. Okay. No, that's fair. Honestly, like when people are like, you know, I have two students in my house. They're actually moving out now, but basically they're both from mainland China. And obviously, like, I mean, they learn English in China, but it's like, I don't think honestly the system is very effective. Like they literally have like some are foreign teachers, some are like, you know, domestic teachers, but they basically like 苹果 apple, like they literally like repeat like, you know what I mean, like I don't like honestly like a lot of like this is just a stereotype across everyone. Like there are definitely some people from mainland China who do speak English very well and very fluently, but I think like the majority that I have met, they're just kind of, they'll come here, and because like Chinese is such a you know, such a widespread language, it's like I don't know if it's before, I think from my understanding from what I remember, it's like Chinese has more native speakers than English, but English is the most spoken language in the world. But like they have significantly more non-native speakers, so speaking English as a second language. And so like I don't know, I just find it funny the fact that you come here and like you know you went to university here in Sydney, and it's like you still have to do like an IELTS test, like to test it to test your English. You know what I mean? And it's just like I don't know, it feels a bit like weird. Yeah,
I guess it's like it's because English is not necessarily like your first language for the people who come here. I feel like countries who have declared like English as like their national language are like the big 5 Western countries, right? Like America, UK, Canada, New Zealand, Australia.
Is it Australia? Okay.
Yeah. Like these are the main 5, right? And then I'm pretty sure every other country has like their own national language. Right. I think Singapore actually also has their national language as English too.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
But like everywhere else, it's like it's their native language. Yeah. So I guess that backs it up. But I don't know, it's like, I feel like with languages it's hard because you can get the theory part right, but being able to like converse with somebody from another culture in that same language is like really hard.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, you've learned Mandarin recently, so I'm sure it's like very different, like learning like, oh, like how to piece together the sentences versus actually speaking to someone who was born and raised in China and uses like the slang and is very
100%.
comfortable using the words and everything. It's
No,
like
for
so
sure.
different.
Yeah, I think like I'm at a level now in terms of my Mandarin where I feel like I can communicate about most things, but because after I came back from China last year, like I don't really use Mandarin as proactively anymore. And so like when I do have conversations with two of my Chinese students or anyone, just anyone in Mandarin, or when I meet new people and I find out they can speak Mandarin and we just kind of converse a little bit, it's like sometimes I have to listen a little bit more, a little bit harder, and it's like the slang that they use, and also like they sometimes roll it. It's like, especially in Beijing, like, it's like,
what's a roll?
So like for anyone who doesn't know, it's like it's called 儿化音. So basically like at the end of certain words, the pronunciation is a little bit different in northern China. So essentially what they'll do is like I'll give an example. So normally in like a standard Mandarin accent, people would pronounce one, which is a second tone, which basically means to play, like how one.
I thought you meant bowl for a second.
No. Second tone, not one.
Yeah.
So basically a second tone, which means to play. People in the north would say war. So it's like how war.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like 出去玩 is like to go out and play.
Yeah.
出去玩. Honestly, I've been out of practice for a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like it's something where when people who like Mandarin is their native language are speaking at normal native level speed. Some like in the past, honestly, when I was in China last year, I think that was the peak of my Mandarin, and I was like, I think I was able to understand and comprehend them the most. And honestly, I feel like I didn't really need to think about it. Like I think I like processed things in Mandarin at that time.
Like your thoughts were in Mandarin.
Yeah, bro. My thoughts were just coming to me in Mandarin.
Really?
Exactly.
I've never had that.
That was honestly like the peak of my Mandarin.
Damn.
But now that I've come back and like it's been 6 months since I was last in China, and like I don't like really use Mandarin anymore. It's like it's a bit laggy, and sometimes I actually have to find myself when I'm speaking with my two students, kind of translating what they say back to me in English.
Yeah.
In order for me to understand.
Yeah.
But like I think it's something like I'm not really like I don't really have a fear of losing it. I think like in the future, if I do ever want to go back to China and like, you know, live there or immerse myself there, I think like I already have like a good enough master of it that I can kind of like just pick it back up again.
Yeah.
You know, super quickly.
Yeah.
But fuck, I feel like we've gone like on a huge tangent, but I just want to kind of bring it back to this week's episode. But basically, what we're talking about this week is I was watching these YouTube these podcasts, these other podcast members, this other podcast who are in America. They're called the Rooftop Pod, and one of the guys on there, Jesse, was talking about his experience growing up in Cincinnati, Ohio, and just kind of feeling like, you know, he grew up in an environment where, you know, the population was majority like white people and he was kind of like a minority. And so I don't know, I think like with me, I have a very similar experience, and I really resonated with what he was talking about and his experience of like, you know, just wanting to be white basically up until he started college. And I think I had a super similar experience, and I think he's a little bit older than me possibly. I'm not actually too sure how old he is, but yeah, I think I kind of had the same thing when I was in primary school of like, you know, I grew up in an environment where there was literally only 3 Asian kids in my year. And when I was in primary school, I think like I didn't really have like full... It wasn't until year 4, I would say, where I kind of started to feel like, you know, shit, like it actually matters that I am Asian. And I started to realize that, you know, kind of feel a bit uncomfortable in my skin and feeling like, oh, wow, like, you know, I feel like the other kids kind of, all the white kids kind of want to stick with each other. And there wasn't that many Asian kids. And I felt like I didn't really want to associate with them because I felt like they weren't the cool kids. And I don't know, I kind of had this complex, this kind of banana complex since about year 4 or so. And I even remember like Rachel, one of the siblings on the Rooftop Pod, was talking about feeling like, you know, just being like less desirable feeling like less desirable as an Asian. And I feel like, our culture is starting to pop off and, become a lot more popular. But back in those days, back in those days, even though it's not even that long ago, it's like, honestly, like the area that I grew up in, that I'm living in Sydney, that I've grown up in for my whole life, it's like there are a lot more Chinese families now. But, when I was in primary school and when I was in high school, honestly, like they were very, very minimal. And so it's something where I think like Rachel from the Rooftop Pod was talking about how, just feeling less desirable as an Asian, and kind of how that ties into your identity living here in Australia. And I think like, I honestly had the same experience when I was in year 5 and year 6. Like there was like a special, like in the playground, there was like this specific seating which was for just people that were in year 5 and 6, which were considered like the seniors of primary school.
Yeah.
And I remember like during lunchtime, or maybe like after sport one time, like a bunch of us were hanging out, sitting on those seats. And I just remember like everyone kind of going in a circle and kind of talking, like just saying like, oh, like, who do you like? Like who do you have a crush on? You know what I mean?
Yeah, in primary school.
And so like everyone kind of went around, and I remember like I said I had a crush on one of these girls, and then it was like everyone was going around, and I was just cause like, dude, like no one said me, and like no one had a crush on me, and I was like, man, like, you just kind of feel a bit shit, like why does no one have a crush on me, kind of thing. And it's like, I don't think I at the time consciously was like, oh, is it because I'm Asian?
Was everybody else there not Asian?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. So I was the only one. So even though there were 2 other kids in my year that were Asian as well, I felt like, so one of the guys actually moved to OC, which is called Opportunity Class here in Australia, where they do
Orange County?
No, not Orange County. But shout out Nathan. But basically, one of the guys that was that I know, he moved to Opportunity Class at another primary school in year 4, and so I don't really remember being friends with him, or like being that close with him. And then there was another girl, and I didn't like, I knew her, but we weren't like super close. And so I also think at that stage, like in primary school, it's like, oh my god, girls, like cooties, like, like, you know what I mean?
Like, so like we were young.
Yeah, so like before 12, it's like, hadn't hit puberty yet, and it's like I don't think I really had that many friends that were like, I was friends with the girls unless I like sat next to them in class, you know? And so I definitely resonate with what Rachel from the Rooftop Pod was talking about in terms of like feeling less desired. And I think that feeling kind of continued on until high school. And I remember like when I started high school, I was like, man, like I really just want to be one of the cool kids. I want to just fit in. And I think like at the beginning when I first started school, I think I have quite like high like social perceptiveness. And like I remember very clearly on the first day, like the groups were just forming kind of after orientation day. And it was like, I had this friend who, his older brother was kind of like considered cool, and we played in the same soccer team, and I kind of like, he didn't actually know anyone at my first high school, and so I just kind of stuck with him because we were in the same soccer team, and we knew each other. Okay. And I kind of honestly, in the quad, I saw the groups kind of forming, like just slowly forming in front of my eyes.
Okay, it was like the first day?
The first day. Literally the first day of school.
I think first day dynamics don't always stick out, though.
I know, that is true, but I could honestly see it, and like, I think it's just natural that people kind of move towards, or like gravitate towards people who are of similar ethnicity or similar cultural background. And so I could just see everyone kind of like, at my first high school, it was quite diverse in terms of ethnicities, but I could just see everyone kind of gravitating towards each other. And there was this one group that was like the cool group. And I remember being like, okay, I'm going to get into that group.
What defined that group as cool though?
So like 3 of the people in that group, they had older siblings who also went to that school. And so they were all pretty sporty, like really sporty. One of them is like state swimmer. One is like a state, really good, like, short distance athlete, and then the other one's like just really good at like footy. And so they kind of knew each other because their brothers were friends. And so I think like I just remember like really wanting to get into that group, and like feeling like, dude, like I have to be in that group kind of thing. And so it was something where like I think throughout high school, like I was really like both high schools that I went to, I honestly lacked like a strong sense of belonging. And I think that kind of like stemmed from my parents divorcing when I was 11 and not really having that sense of belonging, I guess, in at home. And just feeling like, you know, I'm here, born and raised in Sydney, and, you know, I want to assimilate and be a part of Australian culture. I want to feel like I belong here. But like, I think the way that my parent, like the way that my mom raised me, and like the way that my dad my dad didn't really raise me, but just their attitudes towards certain things, it was like, you know, it kind of made it difficult for me to really be able to fit in. And
what
it's like,
sort of examples?
Yeah, so like I think I know that my dad has kind of found it really hard to assimilate into Australian culture. And I don't like, he's never said this to me explicitly, but I kind of know because he's lived here for over 45 years and he still is a Malaysian citizen and still considers Malaysia home. And so I think it's something, honestly, like,
that doesn't necessarily mean he doesn't assimilate to the culture, though. That just means his nationality is, like, it doesn't necessarily mean that.
That is true. That is true. But I think, like, we haven't had, like, explicit kind of conversations about it, but he's kind of implied it that, you know, he doesn't really, like, watch any Australian sport, or he doesn't really follow, like, I feel like his attitudes and his, like, way of life and his hobbies are still, like, you know, super Malaysian.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? And I think that is difficult for someone who moved to a new country after being an adult. Like, he was 21 when he moved here.
Yeah.
But because of that, I think my parents, like, my mum understands it a little bit more, but I think, like, my dad doesn't really fully grasp how hard it was for me to really assimilate into Australian culture and feel like, you know, like, I don't actually want, like, you know, the classics. It's like, I don't want to have, like, Chinese food and bring Chinese food to lunch, or like, you know, like when I was getting into like footy, like NRL when I was a kid, it's like we used to have these chip packets where they would, you'd buy chip packets, and then there would be like NRL players inside, like footy cards.
Oh yeah, like tokens. Yeah.
Zoe actually doesn't know anything about NRL as well, but we're going to State of Origin
on Wednesday.
We're going to State of Origin on Wednesday.
Educated.
So I'm pretty excited. Like, we got our whole gang going, and honestly, there's only 2 Aussies in our group, so like, I'm gonna have to do a little bit of educating, but it'll be a good time.
Yeah.
So yeah, basically when I was in primary school, it was like there was these footy cards that you had to that you bought, like they were like Smith's chips packets.
Yeah.
And then you would like, some of them would come with good cards.
Yeah.
And so at that time when I was in primary school, there's this guy named Benji Marshall who was like literally the best. Like, he played for the West Tigers, and I went for the West Tigers as well because, like, one of my best friends in primary school went for the Tigers. And so, like, obviously it's hard because, you know, both my parents are immigrants and they don't really follow, you know, Australian sport. But it's something where, like, you know, I just had to try so hard to really assimilate into that culture. And honestly, for quite a long period of time, I kind of describe it as, like, cultural repulsion, like feeling like I don't actually want to be Asian.
Yeah, I've heard.
Yeah, kind of doing everything within my power to disassociate with being Asian, disassociate with being Chinese.
Yeah.
And I think like I'm mixed. I'm Chinese Vietnamese, mainly Chinese, only a little bit Vietnamese, but I think there was definitely a period of time which started probably when I was like in year 4, so about 10 years old, up until I was 18, where I was like really just didn't want anything to do with my culture. And just honestly, there was a period of time where I really hated myself and didn't want to be Asian, and felt like, you know, why did I have to be born Asian? Like, why did I have to be born Chinese? And like, you know, in the society where, like, you know, all my friends are white, and like I want to be white as well, and I just want acceptance from them. Yeah. And I think because like I didn't feel like I had that acceptance at home. Like I crave that acceptance and that belonging. That sense of belonging, that sense of acceptance, even more. I almost like longed for it. And it's like nothing else mattered more than getting that acceptance and getting that belonging from my friends. And so...
Do you think they rejected you in your friend group?
100%.
Oh, you think so?
Bro, 100%.
Oh, really?
Bro, we can unpack that, but I'm not gonna trauma dump this
All
episode.
right.
Yeah. So yeah, I think there was like a long period of time from like 10 to 18 where I was like, you know, it was only when I was in about year 4 I started to have consciousness of like, okay, wow, like I feel like people kind of treat me differently, and like I actually am a, you know, ethnic minority here. And you know, even though there are parts of Sydney where it's super Asian, like the part of Sydney where I grew up, you know, I wasn't, and I was actually a minority. And so, you know, I didn't get to pick the fact that I was born and raised in this specific part of Sydney. And so, like, I think, like, Sydney is very, like, a bubble. And, like, it depends on, like, the demographic of people that you're friends with and the area that you grow up in. And I think that really has a strong impact on your experiences and how you view yourself. And so I think people that grew up in, like, you know, Western Sydney or like Hurstville or like Eastwood or like certain parts of Sydney where it's like, oh, it's getting a bit sunny, but there's like a strong Asian presence or like a strong Chinese population. It's like maybe they kind of felt a bit more at home, or not a bit more at home, but like more in touch with their culture, and like they didn't feel like they kind of didn't fit in as much. But for me, because I grew up in like a super, you know, Caucasian dominated environment, it's like, I just didn't have that sense of belonging. And I think like, honestly, like, I guess I'm kind of like at the end of that tunnel now. And like I started university. Once I started university, I started to have Asian friends for the first time. And so my first Asian friends that I actually had was during, the year in between when I started university and graduated from high school, where I was training Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and like some of the boys at my gym were Asian, and I kind of, that was like when I first started to be like, oh cool, like I really relate to I can relate to these people a bit more and like on a deeper cultural level.
Yeah.
And I think like everything from the age of about 10 to 18 was always like, oh man, like, you know, I just want to like be cool and go to parties and like drink like the other boys and like, you know, be into footy. And just be super into Australian culture as much as I can be, you know? But, like...
I think Australian culture isn't merely defined by those things that you've just described, though.
Yeah. No, that is true. But I think just, you know, you're just going to be so impacted by the environment that you're in, right? It's like a fish in water. They don't know that they're in water.
Yeah.
And so it's like, because I was in that environment, I had to kind of mold and change myself to try to fit in.
What do you feel like were like the biggest differences between you and the, like, what that you feel like didn't really, was it because like you felt you looked different, like because you're not represented in like media? Because this is like a bit of a tangent, but I just hear like stories from other people.
Yeah.
I don't really have much of this personal experience just because I grew up in an Asian country around other Asians. But it's like, I think it's like people didn't see themselves being represented in media, or just like like at school, like the people who did the best aren't necessarily people who looked like you. So do you think it's like related to not having that sort of representation, or just like not being able to like relate to their background? Or were they like ever curious about like your culture, or like how you grew up, or like what kind of things? Oh, like just straight up no.
Straight up no.
Damn, okay.
So yeah, I basically kind of had to like, honestly, there was a period of time where like, it sounds funny, and like I know Eddie can kind of attest to this a little bit because of where he grew up in the States, but like, you know, I didn't, like, obviously I know I'm not white, but like there was a period of time where like I would try to like act a bit more Aussie and kind of turn my Aussie accent up even more, so that people couldn't really like discriminate against me. And like, I know that I don't have any kind of accent, like I speak with a just a normal Australian accent, but it's like I felt like I had to really defend my place. It's like, I wasn't actually, like, I didn't choose to be born here, but like I was born and raised here. And it's like, you know, it was almost like, it wasn't like super overt, the racism that I experienced or the prejudice that I experienced, but it was kind of like quite covert and quite casual. And it was like,
in what way?
It was like not to a level that, so I won't give any specific examples of like, actually, I mean, I can, but like, you know, I guess like the word like chink, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's like something where obviously if someone calls me chink, like in person today, like I'm like
It's derogatory.
It's derogatory. Yeah, exactly. And so like I'm not gonna let that fly. But it's like I feel like that in primary school and that in high school was quite normal. Yeah. And I was like, people would be like, "What's up, Chink?" or like some shit like that.
Shit.
You know what I mean? And it's like you just had to accept that.
Yeah.
It's like that's what they're gonna say to you.
You'd be treated differently.
Yeah, and it's like you
you can't take a joke kind of thing.
Yeah, you can't take a joke, bro. You're so sensitive. Exactly, so right? And it's like I had to deal with those demons of like, oh wow, like, you know, I feel like I actually am experiencing like, you know, they would call it casual racism.
Yeah,
you know, like,
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Like, you know, like it is like, you know, that is kind of, it is kind of inherently racist, but it's like, I just had to kind of cop that and feel like, and just kind of like be like, it's okay and rationalize it to myself.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so that was really difficult wrestling with that throughout high school and from about age 10 to 18, 19 years old.
Mm-hmm.
But I think like, yeah, with that being said, like obviously I've done like a full 180 now.
What changed when you turned 19?
Yeah, obviously the biggest thing was like starting university and then joining VSA. So
like meeting people who are more
exactly.
like-minded.
Yeah, so when I started university, my first year of university was in 2019. I joined this for people that don't know, this student society called the Vietnamese Students Association, or VSA for short. And I basically got recruited as like a PR or a public relations officer. And so honestly, that was the first time I had like a small taste of that at my gym, at my mixed martial arts gym. But that was the first time in my life where I kind of felt like, oh wow, like, you know, I really just fit in here. And like I am only partially Vietnamese, but like it was like the first time where I was in a space or I was in an environment where it was like completely Asian, and I was like, oh wow, like I don't actually need to worry about like being on the receiving end of any kind of racism or prejudice,
because everyone has a similar experience.
Well, everyone is pretty much Asian. They're either Vietnamese or Chinese or Cambodian or like some kind of Southeast Asian ethnicity, right? And there were some people that were not Vietnamese in VSA as well. It wasn't like, you know, you can't be in VSA if you're not Vietnamese. Like literally the year that I was a PR, the state president. So we basically have all the university teams, and so there's I don't know what it is right now, but we have like one VSA team at USyd, Macquarie, UNSW, UTS, Western Sydney University, and there was also like the health sciences faculty at USyd, which was the combo team. So there were 6 teams in total, and then there was also what was known as the state team. So the state team were in charge of all the other teams, and they would organize our events that we had, which were like VSA camp, VSA charity dinner, and VSA like ball. So those were like the main 3 events, and also Canberra Youth Night. And so the president, he's called like the state president. This guy was the top, like, so he was in charge of the state team. So like the absolute highest ranking that you can have. Highest ranking that you can have in New South Wales, bro.
In New South Wales.
Because we have the Melbourne teams as well, and they have their own teams, and they have their own executives as well.
Right.
And they also have that in America. But basically,
in America,
they do have it in America. It's not as, I don't know how big it is in America, but they do have.
That's pretty sick.
Some VSA teams in America.
All right.
But basically, this guy who was the state president in 2019, when I was a PR, was Cambodian. So basically, what I'm saying is like, you didn't need to be Vietnamese in order to be in VSA. Yeah.
But it's just to create a sense of community.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't even really know how VSA started, but back to the point, the moral of the story is that like, it was just like a super, like, it was the first time in my life where I was in like a completely like Asian space, and I kind of found that sense of belonging and found like, oh wow, like I can actually embrace my ethnicity, embrace who I am, embrace being Asian. And so, yeah, that was the first time in my life there was kind of a switch in my mentality. Because I think like before, like I went to like the second high school that I went to was like a Catholic school in North Sydney, and like a lot of the environment, a lot of the kids that I kind of grew up with in year 10 to year, like that I knew from year 10 to year 12 were kind of like from well-to-do families and like backgrounds where they were, you know, their parents were probably born in Australia, and they had, you know, they came from money. And so I didn't have that. And it's like, I didn't have a 2-story house where I had a pool and I can just invite my friends over and that kind of thing, you know? It was like, when I was growing up, I honestly felt a little bit ashamed of like, you know, obviously it's not my parents' fault. And, you know, they did everything within their power to give me and my sister the best life possible by immigrating to Australia and starting a new life for us. But it was like, when I was a kid, when I was growing up, it was like, man, like, you know, I don't have a 2-story house. I don't have a pool. You know, I don't really have anything to offer to these people. And so it was
who are
like,
these people? Like your friends?
Like, yeah, my friends. And so, or the group that, honestly, most of them were not good friends, but like the group that I was trying really hard in order to get into and be, and just kind of satisfy that sense of belonging, because I didn't have that at home. And so, like, honestly, at my second high school, the initial group that I was trying to be a part of, like, they already had an Asian kid in there. And so, like, I was like, honestly, he was quite nice to me. And like, I think at the beginning, before I moved schools, I thought like he was going to be like, I thought we were going to kind of have to duke it out over like the
You're
token.
kidding. There can
No,
only
I'm
be
not even
one
joking, bro.
token
There's
Asian.
only going to be one token Asian allowed. They already have a
You're
quota. It's only
kidding.
one, and we're going to literally have to punch on
Who
we're going to have to duke it
declares
out
these
for
quotas,
that.
though?
No, bro, that was literally like how it felt in my mind. You know what I mean?
Do you feel like it was represented in the school though, like that sort of mentality? Obviously, I didn't go to school here, so I'm like, this is like news to me too, like learning about like the dynamics of like I was like in schools.
Yeah.
So I think it varies even so much from one school to another.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. But I think like just the sample space and the specific school that I went to and the culture that was embedded and ingrained in that school, it was like, man, like, I don't know. Honestly, I tried like for over a year to like be part of that group, and they kind of had like their core members, which was like about eight boys or so. And then there was like kind of people on the outskirt of that. And I was on the outskirt, and I was trying to like get into that group so badly. But like, honestly, like, I feel like it was just like a lot of wasted energy. And like, you know, the guy he's Korean, and like, you know, he went to primary school with some of these kids. And I feel like maybe like, I don't know. I feel like maybe I was never going to be accepted. Like, it's probably not even fully to do with the fact that I'm Asian, but like, that's what it felt like at the time. And so it's like, I'm obviously through that period of time now. And, you know, it was very difficult for me to kind of get through those experiences in high school and feeling like just super left out and, you know, no sense of belonging. And it's like, I was kind of stuck in between two cultures, because it's like, you know, I wasn't a part, you know, I'm not white, I'm not Caucasian Australian, and I'm not like super, super Asian. So like, you know, it's like there are a lot of Asians that are first generation here in Australia, but it's like, I feel like they have super traditional values, and it's like they were forced into, you know, I was forced into tutoring from the age of 5 as well. And, you know, do you know what Kumon is?
Yeah, obviously.
Okay. Yeah, me and Eddie have talked about it, but basically, like, I did Kumon from the age of 5, and then when I was in primary school, I went to like another Kumon called pre-uni, and then when I was in high school, I also went to this other tutoring place called Ignition Education. It's like I went through all these Kumon, all these tutoring phases that my parents put me into, and they literally invested thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of dollars to try to turn me into this like traditional Asian. And like, honestly, they probably just wanted me to be like that full on, like, you know, just, you know, get into OC class and get into selective school and then get a 99 ATAR and then go to UNSW.
Do they want you to go to selective school?
Yeah, they did.
Oh,
that was the point of that was the point of the tutoring.
Really? Okay.
What would be the point of the tutoring unless they're trying
I
to
don't
get into
know.
selective school? Exactly.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I don't know, man. Like, honestly, I think like, yeah, what I wanted to reiterate, or I guess the kind of message or story that I'm trying to say, is that like, you know, I just felt like so stuck in between two cultures, because it was like, on one hand, I didn't feel like super Asian and super like, you know, I've always been super rebellious, and I think part of it is my nature, but part of it is because my parents divorced when I was 11 and my dad wasn't there, and I was able to rebel because I was raised by my mum.
Mm-hmm.
And so because I was able to rebel, it was like, I think like I wanted to, like, yeah, I was just kind of stuck in between there were, I was actually in the gifted and talented class in my first high school. I have no idea how I got into that class, but like a lot of those kids in that class in year 7 and 8 were Asian. But I was like, I didn't relate to them because I felt like I just wanted to be cool outside of that. And I was like, it wasn't cool to conform to that stereotype of being like, oh, the kid who's good at math, or the nerd who's good at math is how they would put it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so...
Do you feel like this is going to be the same case in like a selective school environment though?
No, of course not. Of course not.
Because I feel like what is perceived as cool is like almost like different.
Yeah, absolutely. If you go to Sydney Boys or you're going to some like, selective school, it's like... Yeah. I feel like I've kind of talked to this to my sister about this a little bit.
Yeah.
And like, I don't have that experience of going to a selective school, but like, I think it was just like everything was hyper like competitive in terms of academics. And so like performing well academically was kind of what gained you that social validation and that kind
in selective schools.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I can't speak to it like, I can't really speak to it because I don't have that experience, but it's like in my high schools that I went to and the environments that I was in, it was like being academic, like achieving academically was not cool. And it's like, if you wanted to achieve academically, you had to make it look like you weren't trying. It was like,
oh, classic.
I'm like, I literally didn't,
I
didn't study for this test.
I
didn't try for this. I just literally went up there and I did the speech. And
yeah, it's always like that.
I put nothing and I got like 94.
It's always like that.
So like, yeah, that was super embedded in the culture that I grew up in. But it's like, yeah, I think like back to this whole like Asian banana complex thing, because I do want to try to keep this episode on topic. I feel like I've just ranted and I've just like trauma dumped and just talked about a bunch of random stuff.
Talked about your experience growing up in high school.
Yeah, there was no structure to this. I just kind of was talking about my experiences, but I do want to kind of bring it back to this whole Asian banana complex thing. Yeah, I think like, yeah, it was just like really difficult because it was like, man, I was stuck between two worlds. And my parents don't understand because they're immigrants here and they don't understand how much you have to actually conform to Australian society in order to be able to fit in. It's like I used to have this dialogue with myself of like, you can't tell me that I'm not Aussie. And like I had to kind of like just...
Have you been told that? Have you been...
Not explicitly, but like it's been implicitly applied that
how?
Like that I don't belong here and like go back to your own country.
How? Like you're like your friend in school?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Shit,
bro, are you serious?
Crazy.
Mate, I've got that many times in my life.
Damn.
Yeah.
That's rough.
And it's like people just like, bro, go back to where you came from. Like that kind of shit.
Damn.
Yeah, bro. Like this is normal, and this is so normal within certain boys' high schools.
Really?
Here in Sydney. Yeah, 100%.
That sucks.
And so yeah, I mean it is what it is. But yeah, just really wrestling with that and just really struggling with that and kind of like being like, man, like, I don't fit in anywhere. I don't fit in with the white kids, the white kids, like the cool white kids that I really wanted to be a part of because, I didn't have that sense of belonging at home. And I also don't fit into these Asian kids that are like super sturdiest and like, like their parents force them to study. And it's like, you don't come home unless you get a 100% on your math test kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't fit into that either.
Yeah.
So I was just stuck in this like in between two worlds of like, I don't belong anywhere.
Yeah.
And so I kind of carried that sense of like not belonging for pretty much up until 19 years old.
Yeah.
And that was when, things started to change and there was a shift in mentality. But like, even with that as well, like, honestly, a lot of the people that were in VSA were from like Cabra, like, so Western Sydney and kind of a bit further down that way. And like, I also couldn't fully relate to their experiences as well. Mm-hmm. And obviously like there's nothing wrong with being from Western Sydney or from eastern suburbs or like wherever you're from in Sydney. It's like you don't get to choose where you come from, right? But it's like I also felt like I couldn't really fully relate to a lot of people in VSA as well because they were just like just grew up differently from me.
How different?
So like a lot of them went to like public schools, and because I went to like a private Catholic school, it was like a cheap end private Catholic school. It was like about 5K or so yearly. My second high school, it was like I don't think they've really had these struggles of like this banana complex and feeling like they have to try to make themselves as white as possible.
What did they experience?
Because like a lot of the people from like Western Sydney, they would have went to schools where it's predominantly Vietnamese or predominantly Chinese or predominantly Chinese Vietnamese.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? So it's like they're already like most of their cohort is already
very similar to them.
Exactly. They come from the same cultural background, but it's like I was contending with me and 2 other Asians in my grade, or like 5 other Asians, or 10 total in my second high school.
Mm-hmm.
That it's like, you know, I wanted to fit in so badly with the white boys, with the white kids.
Right.
And it's like, I don't think they have that same experience. And so that's why it's like, you know, when I was in VSA as well, even though I did have some good friends during that period of time, it was quite like temporary, I think.
Right.
And so like I couldn't fully rate, and I still, until throughout university, through VSA and throughout university, I was like, man, like I still, even though I'm in VSA and I feel like, you know, a part of this society, and I was the president of the society, it's like, you know, I still feel like I can't even fully relate to everyone.
Yeah.
There. And, you know, honestly, I still have that sense of like, I feel like I don't belong. And
why? Why do you think that?
Yeah, it's like, I think like this new group that we've kind of met, it is a bit more, I'm just going to close this door. But like, I think like it is like, what I love so much about our group that we've met is like, everyone is from like all over the place, right? You know, we have friends from America, we have friends from Canada, we have friends from New Zealand, maybe from Hong Kong. And so it's like super international, and it's like, it doesn't really matter where you're from. You know what I mean? Or like, yeah. And so like, I've kind of I found my sense of belonging in a way through our group of friends that we've made through Run Club recently.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, yeah, I just felt like I was just in this, like, stuck between 2 worlds my entire high school, and almost even a little bit into university as well, where I was like, I never really found my place.
Yeah.
And like, I think like, honestly with Eddie, like meeting him, like I was like, damn, like, you know, I kind of really resonated with some of his experiences.
Yeah.
And like, you know, we honestly can probably do another episode on this and deep dive even more, and get Eddie's opinion and input on this.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, man, like, I've just felt like my whole life, like, just like the odd one out, like the ugly duckling per se.
Really?
Yeah, because it's like, you know, all our cousins on my dad's side, like they all went to selective schools. My sister also went to a selective school. They all went to university, super straight A, you know, we call it straight A 180. It's like, you know, finished high school, went to university, finished their degree within the full-time time frame, and then just got a full-time job. Yeah. And it's like, man, I've never ever wanted anything to do with the 9-to-5 life. You know, I've wanted to be an entrepreneur my entire life. And, you know, I ran a small part of photography business when I was in high school. And it's like, I always viewed myself as an entrepreneur, and I am an entrepreneur, but it's like, it's so hard to break away from that mold. And especially when everyone else in your family, all they do, everyone is 9-to-5. Everyone is graduated university. You know, I dropped out of university, and I'm working on this thing with the podcast and the cycling club and these other endeavors that are happening. But it's like, I've always felt like it was innate within me to be an entrepreneur. And like, that's only kind of still coming into fruition now. That's only just coming into fruition. But it's like, man, I had to struggle with that my whole life of like, you know, people just don't understand me. You know, it's like, you know, I don't fit into any box. And that's been difficult. Yeah. And so that's why I think I want to build community through this cycling club, and I want to grow this podcast and kind of be able to grow a following and hopefully find my tribe. You know, it's like your vibe attracts your tribe. And find people who have gone through similar experiences of me, of like, you know, having had to assimilate and conform to the culture on such a deep level, and just those struggles. Yeah. And then also like people who are also entrepreneurs as well and have a business mindset. I think like I'm not intelligent in the traditional sense, but I know that like I have a very business mind, and like I am super creative in certain ways. And like I feel like I've almost had to kind of like just put that on pause for like the majority of my time growing up, because my parents were just like, you know, they obviously care about me and they want me to have stability and they want me to earn a solid income. But it's like, man, I always wanted to just do it my way. Yeah. And it's like, I think like, I don't know whether like they're going to fully accept the decisions that I make.
Yeah.
And, you know, the fact that I just decided to quit my job and start a podcast. Now I'm started a cycling club and a run club, and, you know, all these endeavors and these ideas that come to me and put them into action.
Yeah.
But it's like, I think like, hopefully one day they will be fully accepting of those, of my decisions. And like, honestly, I don't know whether like I need to be like a worldly success and like be validated externally in terms of growing this podcast to a number of subscribers or to a number of views and then monetizing it. And then, you know, building this cycling club and then putting out merch and then selling merch and then actually building a real community and something that's tangible and looking at it from the outside perspective and like, wow, like Jeremy's actually built something, you know, he put his blood, sweat and tears into it and he's built something that's that we can be proud of. Honestly, I don't know whether I need to get there in order for them to fully accept me or like be okay with my decisions.
You can't bank. Like, if your definition of success is dependent on someone's opinion of you, it's going to be very hard to reach that. Because it's like, it's not defined by your own metrics. It's defined by somebody else's metrics.
Right. I mean, it's not that my metrics of success are definitely not measured through their metrics. It's just that I think they want success for me, but what success is for me is different for what their version of success is for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like my dad's version of success is probably like went to UNSW, finished a Bachelor of Accounting co-op scholar like undergraduate degree, and then working at PwC.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's like, I'm never going to be that. I'm never going to work at PwC. Like, I'm not going to be in any big four ever.
Yeah.
But it's like, until you can kind of be successful, until I can be successful on my own terms, and even though it doesn't matter to me, the external metrics, what matters is my own internal metrics. It's like, until I can actually be validated and successful by society's metrics, I don't know whether my parents are going to be like, oh, we're proud of him and we're happy with his decisions.
Yeah, and sometimes it's hard, right? Because it's just different, but that's also okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we have to kind of contend with as first gen and
Not even like first gen, it's just like any like, I think we've really talked about this, not sure like on the pod or like offline, but it's like, like when you have a kid, you kind of expect them to be like what you want them to be, but what if what they want is very different from what you want of them? Yeah. And then it's like, you have to like, do you want to be a supportive parent or do you just want to like mold them into what you think they should be doing kind of thing?
Right. Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, we'll see what happens with time, but like, yeah, it's kind of difficult. So, yeah.
No, but I want to just, I didn't grow up in the same environment, but I guess can provide like my viewpoint on the whole thing. But it's like, I think what your experience is like so valid and just, I think everyone to a certain extent experiences that, but maybe not on the same, not in the same exact lens. But I feel like everyone who goes through high school, maybe not everyone, maybe that's overgeneralizing, but a lot of them just kind of go through an experience where they're trying to fit in. Like everybody just wants to conform to like what is perceived as like the most socially accepted like group or like what is most socially accepted, whether that be sports, group activities or like academics. Like it's obviously different across different cultures and different schools, but I think collectively as like teenagers going through that stage, it's like you just want to be liked by everybody, you just want to be accepted. And I think it's like as you get older, you kind of like grow your sense of self. So that's maybe like you, for your example, that's for you, that's like you growing into your own identity, accepting yourself and not trying to like fit in someone else's mold of like what is perceived to be like the most popular group of or whatever. But yeah, I think everybody to a certain extent experiences that, and but just through different facets. Maybe like even in a like someone who grew up in a completely in a school where like everybody looks like them, kind of has like the same cultural background, but then maybe they don't suit a certain demographic of what's perceived as cool in that school either. They might have a very similar experience to what you've experienced. But yeah, high school is a weird time, and just makes this honestly just like 100%. Prods me and makes me think like, damn, like if I ever choose to have kids, like where I decide to send them before school
Right.
really shapes
100%.
a lot of their
Yeah.
formative experiences, and
for
it's
sure.
a really big decision. It's not just like, oh, this school is good, you should
100%.
send your kids there. Like
100%.
like what kind of like what friends they make there is probably a lot of their lifelong friends. Like I'm
Yep.
still really close to a lot of my high school friends.
Yep.
But I could definitely see how if you didn't connect with your high school friends, how
I'm
that'd be like
literally
a
not friends with
really
anyone from. I have like one friend from like my second high school, and we're kind of in touch every now and again, but like we haven't seen each other in a while. But like other than that, zilch.
I definitely hear it though. It's like it shapes a lot and how you perceive like things, because that's like your brain is like developing. You're an adolescent. It's like all these things are happening. It's like it's very it shapes a lot of how you walk into like your early adult life too. So
Right.
damn, just it gave me lots of things to think about too. I'm like, oh shit, like
Yeah, bro, you gotta.
yeah, no, but I think cause I grew up in Malaysia, and I experienced both like the public school system and the international school system. So it's like it's not the exact same experience for you. We can talk about another episode of whatever, but yeah, I guess I was lucky enough where I did find my group of people who like accepted me, and like I really enjoyed high school, and just like the experience I got through there, and the people I met I'm still friends with today, and just like damn, like, but as a parent though, it's like you really need to be perceptive about these kinds of things, and like support your kid when they are going through these things, because I find a lot of these things you don't find the words to articulate what you're experiencing until much later, and you're able to have like an adult experience to compare it to as well.
Right.
But yeah, thank you for sharing though.
That's all right, bro. I feel like I literally just like borderline trauma dumped, but like it is what it is. But should we wrap up or?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks so much for listening to. This is actually episode number 7. I messed up last week, but episode number 7 of Late Night Hotpot. I'm your host Jeremy.
I'm Zoe.
And we'll see you on the next episode. Bye.
Bye.